The Strait of Hormuz is a tiny channel, but it's the gateway for much of the world's energy. If it were blocked, the global economy could grind to a halt. Fuel shortages, empty shelves, and silent factories. Our civilization's stability hangs by this slender thread of water. How resilient is our world to such a shock? The Strait of Hormuz is a geographical marvel and a geopolitical flashpoint. At its narrowest point, this channel is only about 21 miles wide, a tiny gap separating the landmasses of Iran and Oman. Through this tight passage, the waters of the Persian Gulf meet the Gulf of Oman, and by extension, the Great Arabian Sea and the world's oceans. It is the only sea passage from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean, making it one of the most strategically important choke points on the planet. For nations like Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, it is the primary outlet for their immense energy exports. The sheer volume of resources that flows through this strait is staggering. Nearly a fifth of the world's total oil consumption and over a third of the global liquefied natural gas trade pass through its waters every single day. These are not just abstract numbers. They represent the energy that heats our homes in winter, powers the servers that run the internet, and fuels the vehicles that transport our food. This single narrow waterway is the lifeline for countless industries and economies, a critical artery pumping the energy that sustains our modern way of life. Its continuous operation is essential for global economic stability. This immense strategic value, however, also makes the strait a place of constant tension. Its location in a volatile region means it has often been at the center of political and military disputes. The threat of its closure, whether through military blockade, acts of sabotage, or political conflict, has loomed over the global economy for decades. Historical incidents have shown just how quickly tensions can escalate, turning this vital economic corridor into a front line of geopolitical confrontation. The world has held its breath on more than one occasion as crises have flared up in these crowded waters. Therefore, to understand the Strait of Hormuz is to understand a fundamental vulnerability at the heart of our global system. We are exploring a scenario where this fragile lifeline is severed. What would be the immediate domino effect on global markets? How would industries, from manufacturing and technology to agriculture, cope with such a sudden and catastrophic energy shock? Could our interconnected civilization, so dependent on this single point of passage, withstand such a blow? Or could it send us spiraling back toward a simpler, darker, and more primitive existence? The Strait of Hormuz, nestled between the Arabian Peninsula and Iran, is the world's most vital maritime choke point. Here, nearly all Gulf oil must pass through a narrow, winding channel just 2 miles wide. This bottleneck concentrates immense traffic and risk, making it a critical lifeline for energy giants like Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The uninterrupted flow through this strait is essential for global trade and economic stability. Every day, a ballet of mammoth vessels unfolds in the Strait of Hormuz. These supertankers, longer than 3 football fields, carry the lifeblood of nations, millions of barrels of oil and gas, through narrow, high-stakes shipping lanes. Strict protocols keep this 2-lane ocean highway moving, watched over by naval patrols to ensure safe passage. The dance of these giants is a daily spectacle, and a silent reminder of our world's reliance on this fragile maritime artery. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most critical energy artery. Each day, 21 million barrels of oil, about 1/5 of global consumption, flow through this narrow channel. This immense volume powers economies, fuels our cars and planes, and keeps cities lit. Any disruption here sends shockwaves through global markets, revealing just how dependent and vulnerable our world truly is. The numbers don't lie, so much depends on so little. The Strait of Hormuz is the artery through which the world's energy pulses, especially for Asia's booming economies. China, India, Japan, and South Korea rely on these oil shipments to keep their industries and cities running. For them, any disruption isn't just inconvenient, it's a threat to national security. Even as Europe and North America diversify, the global oil market remains tightly interconnected. A single delay in the strait can send shockwaves through prices worldwide, from Tokyo to Ohio. This energy superhighway is fiercely protected by naval patrols from major powers, all determined to keep oil flowing. The balance is precarious. Consumer nations need stability, while those controlling the strait hold immense leverage. Even rumors of trouble here can send oil prices soaring, reflecting the ever-present geopolitical risks. The world's economy is tethered to this narrow, volatile corridor, its stability shaped by distant events. The Strait of Hormuz is where global demand, supply, and power all collide. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just about oil. It's the lifeline for liquefied natural gas, or LNG. Qatar leads the world in LNG exports, shipping supercooled gas through the strait to energy-hungry nations in Asia and Europe. LNG is vital for electricity, industry, and heating, especially in countries with few domestic resources. Over a third of global seaborne LNG passes through these waters each year. A closure here would trigger not just an oil crisis, but a parallel gas crisis, blackouts, shortages, and soaring prices. For Japan and many European nations, Qatari LNG is a cornerstone of energy security. The strait's dual role as a conduit for both oil and gas makes its security doubly critical. Any disruption would deliver a devastating blow to the global economy. The story of Hormuz is now about both black gold and indispensable gas. Two energy lifelines side by side through one narrow channel. The Strait of Hormuz has been a battleground, never more so than during the Iran-Iraq tanker war of the 1980s. Both sides targeted oil tankers to cripple each other's economies, turning the Gulf into a war zone. Hundreds of ships were damaged, insurance costs soared, and the world watched as vital oil flows came under fire. The U.S. intervened, escorting tankers to protect the global oil supply, a clear sign of the strait's strategic value. Tensions escalated, with direct clashes between U.S. and Iranian forces. The tanker war proved the strait's vulnerability wasn't theoretical. It was terrifyingly real. The world learned how quickly regional conflict could threaten global stability. Images of burning tankers and foreign navies in the Gulf left a lasting mark. The memory of those years is a constant warning. The strait's peace is always fragile. The lessons of the tanker war still shape global energy security today. Peace never truly returned to the Strait of Hormuz. It remains a flashpoint of global tension. Iran's control of the northern coast gives it powerful leverage, and threats to close the strait are a recurring tactic. The IRGC Navy has built a formidable arsenal of fast boats, missiles, mines, and submarines, all designed for asymmetric warfare. Military drills and periodic incidents, like tanker seizures and drone shoot-downs, keep the world on edge. Each flare-up sends oil prices spiking, exposing the market's hair-trigger sensitivity. The strait is a front line in a simmering conflict, with rival navies operating in dangerous proximity. One mistake or provocation could ignite a crisis with global consequences. Billions depend on the uninterrupted flow through this narrow passage. The world watches, hoping the powder keg remains unlit. In Hormuz, peace is always provisional. Imagine the unthinkable. The Strait of Hormuz is suddenly closed. Oil prices skyrocket within hours. financial markets plunge, and panic spreads faster than any physical shortage. Billions in assets are stranded at sea as tankers halt, with no easy detours available. Governments scramble, emergency meetings, crisis plans, and talk of releasing strategic reserves. The world's energy supply chain seizes at its most critical point. Airline and shipping stocks collapse, while oil and renewables surge. The economic shock is instant, wiping out trillions in market value. The first domino falls, setting off a chain reaction no one can fully control. The world holds its breath, hoping for a swift resolution. In a single day, the fragility of our global energy system is laid bare. A financial panic quickly becomes a physical crisis as oil supply drops and prices surge. Transportation grinds to a halt, making shipping goods expensive and scarce. Factories slow, then stop, as energy costs soar and supply chains break. Rolling blackouts hit cities, and industries relying on natural gas shut down. The domino effect ripples worldwide, revealing just how fragile our interconnected world truly is. A closure at Hormuz would trigger a chain reaction, reaching far beyond factories and gas stations, into every corner of our lives. Electronics production would halt, causing shortages of devices we rely on daily. Food supply chains would break down, making basic staples scarce and expensive. As prices soar, unrest would erupt worldwide, straining governments and threatening global stability. To guard against sudden energy shocks, nations have built insurance policies, most notably Strategic Petroleum Reserves, or SPRs. These vast oil stockpiles can be released in a crisis, buying time and stabilizing prices. Alternative pipelines like Saudi Arabia's East-West and the UAE's Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline add vital redundancy. Together, these measures are the world's main defenses against a catastrophic oil supply disruption. The only true long-term solution to the Hormuz problem is to reduce our dependence on oil and gas. This has fueled a global race toward a new energy era, with explosive growth in renewables like wind, solar, and geothermal. These sources are becoming mainstream pillars of energy supply. Nations see domestic renewables as a way to insulate their economies from oil market volatility. Advances in battery storage let us use solar and wind power even when the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing. Each electric car on the road reduces the strategic importance of oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. The question is not if the world will transition, but if we can do it fast enough to avert a crisis. The Strait of Hormuz is more than a shipping lane. It's a mirror of our global dependencies and fragility. Our world's prosperity relies on this narrow passage, a single artery shaped by the fossil fuel age. But humanity is racing to redefine its future, transitioning to renewables and building a more resilient, independent energy system. At this crossroads, the question remains: can we outsmart our own creation before crisis strikes?